going to turn the stream on now and we'll get going. Perfect. Okay, folks, we are live. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us tonight in this to be incredibly engaging conversation. My name's Taylor. I'm from the Belonging Brant Project, and myself, and along with a committee of wonderful folks from the community and various agencies from Brantford Brant, have helped organize this wonderful week of events. And we just want to thank you all for being a part of this event tonight and the 2021 Asset-Based Community Development Symposium. This year obviously has looked very different from the in-person symposiums we've been able to host in the past. And we're really excited that we're able to still hold this virtual space together and engage with a number of brilliant and creative, playful and resilient community connectors and community builders. We have folks joining us from both our own local area and from far, far beyond. We had some folks come in from Australia last night. It was fantastic. So big thank yous to our community partners and also to the Ontario Trillium Foundation. I want to start tonight off by just saying how thrilled we are to have this truly local panel. We honestly can't wait to learn about the incredible work being done by these folks to connect our community both to food and to build community connections through food. As we begin tonight's conversation about connection and about food and about asset-based community development, it's really crucial that we ground ourselves in the histories and futures of the places we live. Across this amazing digital network we've cultivated, there are numerous stories of land, treaties, and stewardship. As hosts, we are located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples. This land is part of the Haldimand Tract and is captured within the Two-Row Wampum Belt Covenant and the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. These treaties instruct us to honor the original peoples of this land as the stewards of this space, to embrace and celebrate the ecology and networks of nature that grow here, and to live lives of peaceful non-interference. We urge each of you to become familiar with these treaties and the nations of the land where you live in order to more wholly inform the work you do and to more deeply connect with the concepts of community that we're going to discuss tonight. As we've been encouraging with all of these events, we'd love it if you could drop some info in the chat about where you're coming from tonight, what community you're joining us from. And we'd also love to know how you found out about this event. We also want to acknowledge the lineage of disability justice advocates whose work to cultivate more inclusive online spaces has informed many of the ways that we're able to easily connect during COVID-19. We're grateful to the generations of thinkers and activists who came before us to instruct and inform the resources, accessibility tools, and social distancing techniques that have become a lifeboat to our communities during these distance times. So engagement is very much encouraged in this space. So use the chat, hit your reaction buttons, and when the time comes for the Q&A, feel free to unmute yourself and ask some questions. You can raise your hand through the participation button. And you can also use the chat if you're joining us tonight through YouTube. With that in mind, though, I would again just encourage folks to stay muted when people are talking. Without further ado, let me pass things off to tonight's fantastic moderator, Mandy Samwell. Mandy is a fantastic and passionate community builder. She serves as president of the Eagle Place Community Association and is a public health broker with the Brant County Health Unit. Mandy was also one of the fantastic community members who helped make this year's ABCD Symposium possible. So Mandy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Taylor. Welcome, everybody. I was just going to introduce our panelists for tonight. There's some amazing people that I've gotten to had the opportunity to work on a lot of great projects with, so I'm pretty excited to have all of you here. First is Cheryl Antoski. Cheryl is the co-founder of the Equal Grounds Community Gardens, which is heading into its 14th season. In 2014, Cheryl was elected to the Brantford City Council, where she, among other things, shines a light on the importance of growing food and the prevalence of food security challenges in our community. And Mark Beach. Mark is a pastor of youth outreach at Brant Community Church in Eagle Place. There he leads a community outreach program that includes the BCC Food Market, which is a choice-based food access program. Alex Maladon, oh my gosh, sorry, Alex. Alex Maldonado. Alex is Six Nations Mohawk Turtle Clan. She works as the Cultural Resource Coordinator at Brisk in Brantford, where she provides cultural support, knowledge in any areas folks are needing. She works with the cycle of life, so all ages, providing programs, workshops, kits, videos, and more. Alex provides one-on-one support and creates cultural goals to help gain more Indigenous knowledge based on people's needs and their interests. And last but not least, Rachael Sawczuk. Rachael is the co-founder and present leader as a facilitator of the Brant Food Forest, which was established in 2016 and started planting in 2018. She is passionate about community, social justice, and human rights. Now I'd like to ask our panelists if you would like to say any more about yourselves. So I'd like to open that up. Okay. In that case, we'll jump right into the questions. All right, so the first question we have for our panelists tonight is, could you tell us how your organization decided to get involved with food access, food justice, and food justice work in our community? And we'll start with Cheryl.
Thanks, Mandy, and thanks for having me be part of this. This is exciting to be able to connect this way. For me, I would say it didn't start as an organization. We were hearing lots of concern about our food bank not having healthy food for people that needed to access it. And so I went out looking for some land and wanted to start a small community garden to grow food, specifically for the food bank. I received two responses back, one from the city saying, hey, we've got this plot of land, and one from Tom Pate at Brentwood Farm saying, hey, we've got this plot of land. I quickly learned that my version of a small plot of land and a farmer's version of a small plot of land are two very different things. And I was gifted 3/4 of an acre to start my little 10 by 10 garden that I thought I was going to do on, and really hoped that the sun and the rain would help because I had no experience, and that's how we started, and that's what has grown to today.
That's awesome, Cheryl. Thanks for sharing. Mark, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'll talk about the church, because the food market already existed by the time I was on staff. It had been operating for about a year, and so they originally had a building downtown but grew out of that space, and we purchased the building we now have in Eagle Place on Superior Street. And when they moved into that community, they did so with the intention of not existing only for ourselves, but existing for the betterment of the community. And so one way that they envisioned doing this was through food access programs, as they saw a real need for it. The food bank itself is in our neighborhood, but at that time they didn't know any other organizations that were providing food in Eagle Place. And so that's kind of how our food market was really born and how it came to be. And the church just immediately got behind it. And even to this day, they provide about 95% of the food that we distribute through the market. And we have a volunteer coordinator that does a great job at it. And we have a volunteer team. And so that's kind of how our food access work began, just seeing a need and doing something about it.
That's so great. We're so glad that you moved to Eagle Place. Rachel, how about yourself?
My passion for food was really influenced for me by my upbringing and my dad. I come from a large family of 10 children, and I come from a low income family. And so access to food could be tough, but it was something that my dad made super essential. I met a lady here locally in Brantford when I was going to school who was interested in putting trees in Parsons Park, or I mean, not in Parsons Park, that's where we are now, sorry, in parks in general. And a couple months later, we went to a resilience conference in London, Ontario, and they had a seminar there about food forests, and that's how we found out about it. Gabor Sasson down there helped lead one, and he helped facilitate our interest. We went down there to visit all their food forests. And he set us up with our consultant and gave us a lot of information to help facilitate the idea.
Thanks, Rachel. That's great. And Alex, how about yourself?
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So coming from my point of view, for us, the biggest factor, I think, was when COVID had first hit, seeing the impact that came from that. And within our, like how you said and mentioned before, we have a huge population of Indigenous community members within our area. So we had seen just the stores were shutting down, the transportation was not there, and we had felt if there's anything that we can do at this point in time, providing food is our biggest factor that we can do. And we deliver all throughout Brantford and the area around here. So that was, I think that was our key, was just seeing, and also from our staff, we had the impact on ourselves because we have children. So it was very huge for us to see from our point of views, and then also going out and asking the community the things that they had wanted and what they were desperately needing at this time period. And food was the key factor of us being able to at least stay connected in that way.
Thank you. So let's chat about the impact of COVID and how has the pandemic made you get creative in connecting to community? How has the pandemic impacted food access work in Brantford and Brant? And this time, maybe we'll start with Rachel.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Definitely it impacted us last year. We couldn't plant our spring planting last year. It got put off to the fall, so we're a season behind because of it. We also can't advertise events. I can advertise to find volunteers, and so I made a volunteer team, and that's how I'm facilitating, but it's to like more strategic, and you know exactly how many people are going to be in the park that day. So it's set up on the parameters. Last year we could only have 10 volunteers in the park at once. So we always had sanitizer and encouraged people to wear a mask, but definitely to social distance. But it, like I said, it delayed us, but we tried our best to work through it, and it still needed life being brought to the park and taken care of. So we worked all around that.
Awesome. It sounds like even though there were some challenges, you guys are still moving along.
Definitely.
Cheryl, how about yourself?
Thanks. For us, COVID had some definite challenges, but also brought some opportunity for us. From that one garden 13 years ago, we now have a number of volunteers and a number of community gardens. And in fact, I see some of our participants on here today, which is great. So the challenge was we weren't able to, well, first of all, community gardens were deemed recreational through the province. And so there was a province-wide lobbying effort saying this is food, this is not recreational. And so we did get added to the essential list. But locally, we didn't have the capacity to deal with all of the COVID restrictions and open up all of the gardens. And the challenging part was the ones that we were able to open in the parks had to be fenced. And that was very, very frustrating for the community. It was frustrating for us as well. The win that we got from that was we were able to actually take measurement and see what came out of a garden, because when the gardens are always open, everything's qualitative, right? You knew there was a couple of tomatoes there today and tomorrow they're gone. But we were able to pretty much measure everything that came out of there, and we had a baseline. The other thing was it forced us a little further along our line, which was to get people more comfortable with growing their food. Which is what the community gardens were meant to do. You could come and mess up in our community gardens, learn your stuff, and then take it home and recreate. So we started a host garden program where we supplied people with seed and plants and whatever we could to make sure we removed the barriers, gave them ideas about how they could incorporate it into their kids' school lessons at home. We had Zoom meetings every week. And we had 50 people from the city and 20 people from the county join on. So for our first year, so that was great, and we're continuing that this year. But it was COVID that pushed us to make that happen, so that we were making sure that food was, and everybody that had a host garden donated a portion back into the community, whether it was their neighbors, whether it was a local soup kitchen or the food bank, whatever they had access to.
Sounds like some really great things came out of the challenges that you faced with the pandemic, knowing how much food you actually were growing and all of the involvement that you were able to engage. That's awesome. Alex, how has the pandemic affected yourself?
I think like coming from the Indigenous perspective and bringing that in, we tend to look at our mental and our emotional and our physical and our spiritual overall well-being. So kind of hitting all those factors and figuring out ways when it comes to providing. For us, our biggest thing is gatherings. We were always like, well, we can do different gatherings. We can have our communities, our socials, our powwows. And with that being a huge no-no for us, it was like, okay, now we have to figure out ways to impact. And I think, like how Cheryl said, we had to figure out ways, and it was so challenging to provide. And we had to say, like, we have to come up with just tons of different ideas. And I think for us, the access that was happening through online, everybody was online at that time period. There was the social media perspective, there was the news perspective, right? And that's where we had seen the doorways within that to be able to still connect to the community. With them not being able to come to the gatherings, at least they were seeing our impact that was happening on social media. And that was our biggest way to have that door into the community, so that they had seen that we're here and we can provide whatever it is that they're needing. And I think that was our huge impact just within that.
That's great. It sounds like you found some really great ways to have everybody still feel connected. Mark, how would you say that the food market was affected during COVID?
Yeah, for us, before COVID, we were a choice-based program, meaning we had a little room set up where people could get sort of a shopping experience when they visited the market. But COVID kind of put an end to that. We had to do pre-packed bags and just have people come in and pick up a bag. And we like and we value choice a lot, and it was hard for us to make that change to not provide choice for our participants. And another way too is we were big on, sit down and have a coffee while you're waiting for your turn to go on the market, and our volunteers were interacting with our guests and our guests were interacting with each other, and it became for some a little community when they stopped by the market to pick up their groceries that day. And we've lost a bit of that because of COVID. We still are connected, but it's shorter conversations and we're not getting those same connections that we used to. So, but some good things has come out of it. We've been able to, more money's been opened up. So we've been able to get some grants. We got some gift cards, $5,000 worth of gift cards that we were able to give out and give back a little choice to people. And then we got some money to expand our space. And so once COVID slows down, we have a brand new, bigger market that's just going to bring so much more value to our guests and make it more of a shopping experience than we had before. So yeah, some challenging things, but also some good things to come out of COVID. So
that's awesome. I can't wait to see the new space.
It's beautiful.
Okay, so something that is really great about all of the work that you're all up to is the fact that you center choice and community participation. What are some of your favorite memories in working alongside the community? And what community participation, what are some of the risks you've taken and challenges to this work? And we'll start with Mark this time.
Yeah. Well, some of our favorite memories are centered around the people that we get to meet on market days. Just, we get to hear their stories and their challenges. And in that time, they really open up and we just become a listening ear while they're shopping for their groceries or while they're just, waiting in line. And that's been really rewarding for myself and for our volunteers as well. We had one guy come in a couple of years ago and he had just had his bike stolen and he was visibly upset about what had happened and was sharing this with an older couple that was there volunteering that day. And they just kind of sat and listened to him and supported him a little bit. And in the end, they offered to get him another bike. And so a couple days later, they dropped off this bike to his house. Now, we're not giving away free bikes, but that's just how they interacted. So it's these real connections and real relationships that are built through our market, and that's sort of the joy that we find in it, making connections. And like I said before, even through the pandemic, we've been able to maintain those connections. They're a little bit different. But that's what I find rewarding and some of my favorite memories. I'm not going to remember the stats of our market, but 10 years down the road, I'm going to remember the connections that we made with people, and that's really important for us. So, yeah.
That's pretty amazing, that story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Rachel?
The biggest challenge was definitely people believing that we were going to persevere and plant a food forest. When we went around like knocking on doors, having open houses, everyone's like, "Are you sure you're gonna? Are you sure? Are you sure?" They really wanted it. Lots of people in the community definitely were interested in planting a food forest, but just seemed like too big of a task to them, like far from the reach. But we've definitely proved that's possible, and we're hoping to keep growing. My favorite memory with working with people is the families. In the beginning, definitely now we build up our volunteer base, but it takes time to build up a volunteer base. And it was so great. Like, you just have a few of us in the park, and then you'd have like a family mom bring in her whole family. I've literally had 3 generations of family members in the park helping out. And I've got to know like some of our dedicated volunteers' whole family, their kids, their grandkids. And it's so great to see and engage with them.
That's great. And look at that. You proved everybody wrong. That's so awesome. How about yourself, Alex?
I'm totally with you guys on that. I think the connection with the community is the biggest thing. And for me, it's watching the growth that had come from this. I know from the get-go in the beginning, there was just a huge impact. There was the fear, and there was just so much emotions living through this. And I think with building those connections with those community members and having the one-on-ones and connecting with their families, I think I love that. That for me, that's like the key for everything, is to build connections with their family lines, right? And sourcing them and making sure that they're building friendships throughout the community. So having that backbone support is my biggest thing that I love to see. And the growth from the families, and like how you said, to have those 3 generations and you be able to witness, that's so huge. And for us, we truly enjoy seeing that, from elders to the little ones. And even if it's not their grandma or grandpa, still to see that kindness and that love coming from them, the impact that it's going to have on that child to grow, right? And I think that was definitely huge. And the risk that we've taken, I think what it is no matter what, being that frontline worker, being there, being hands-on, it's a risk, and emotional risk as well, because we take on lots, just within our whole overall well-being, and figuring out ways to balance that is amazing. And I think that's like the hugest impact that I can see from this all.
That's amazing. And I hear everybody echoing about connections tonight. So that's so great. Cheryl, how about yourself?
The story of connection continues. You know, my focus and my goal with almost everything I do is about building the village. I feel that we've really lost a lot of that. People don't know the people that live beside them, their neighbors, etc. So two really quick favorite stories. One is one of the models of gardens we have is called a pay it forward garden, and that's usually in your front yard, and that's people can come and take what they want and mosey along their way. And I have one in my garden. I was out there one night, and I don't know what I was doing. I was working in the garden, and 2 little girls stopped by and asked what I was doing, and I told them what I was doing, and picked some cherry tomatoes and showed it to them. And then their dad came to pick them up. and asked all kinds of questions. It was a really neat exchange, and then off they went. The next day, I'm pulling into my driveway and there's a car waiting out there, and these two little girls jump out of the car, and you know the little pint green baskets you get your fruit in in this was a plum and a pear. And they brought it back and said, thank you very much for sharing with us. And so that has really stuck with me, because they went out of their way to they were paying it back, they were paying it forward, they were understanding this whole connection, this community. So that really stuck with me. In fact, I posted a picture saying this isn't just a pear, right? So that's one. The other one with the community gardens is we started a know your neighbor potluck, and we went and flyered the neighborhoods and come meet at the garden. It's a potluck, get to know your neighbors. And that's been really, really successful. And we learned about people that, you know, have lived across the street from somebody for 15, 20 years. Now they can call them by name. And because they can call them by name, they're also going over and helping them shovel their snow, and all these connections that used to be natural, right? So that the food is a great benefit, but it's these other things too that are so important. Our biggest challenge is to get people to understand that fresh food is for everyone. It's not only for marginalized people. It is for, we have created this barrier about food. So we have a hard time, someone who is one of the haves won't participate in the community garden because they need to leave it for other people. So they continue that division, right? So, or in the first couple of years, people coming and looking, and they think they know they're allowed to take it, and you'd see them do this, they'd look behind them because they weren't sure if they were suspicious about being able to just help themselves. So there's a culture shift there, and really we're trying to undo the division between economic classes regarding local fresh food, because we should all sit at the table and we should all enjoy it, because the rest of that stuff doesn't matter. So that's probably one of our biggest challenges right now.
That little girl in the basket, that's so inspirational. That's awesome. So I had a question. How have people been able to share their gifts with you, and how have you been able to share your gifts with the community through food? And we'll start with Alex this time.
So I think overall with our food and the gifts that are coming from it is we're also not only just doing we kind of do like these healthy food kits. So they go out 2 times a month, and we have our fresh veggies in there because we know that's a huge source for our overall well-being. And some of the grocery stores right now don't have the best produce. So we're reaching out to our local markets and connecting with them to see if they can provide these kits that we're doing. We also have our Elders food box. So that goes out the after week from our regular food hampers. And then we look at holidays as well. Because the family engagement comes from that. So for Easter, we had provided turkeys and everything else to go with it, the stuffing, and just we threw in some chocolate bunnies to just for the kids, right? Because we always have to think about the children. But I think the overall with those kits and the impact that's coming from those kits being provided. And then we also have like our dry pantry. So that's just a resource for anybody if they're out and about in the community and they're noticing that they're running low on the dry goods, or we even look at homelessness and them not having the ability to cook up things, right? They don't have that connection through a refrigerator or the microwave or a stove. We're able to be like, hey, we have some dry goods here, and yeah, it may not be a complete hot meal as much as we had hoped for, and that is something that we're working on still. But it's still having that ability to have those kits going out to the community and having that access, that just the resource and the access for everybody.
Wonderful. And I love the touches with the Easter bunnies. That's great. And how about yourself, Mark?
Yeah, we have a number of people in our church community that have been. We have a farmer that is an egg farmer, and so he shares the gift of eggs with us. And so every 2 weeks he shows up with, I don't know how many dozen eggs that go out to our community. We have others who have the gift of shopping, and they literally shop for our market because they just love shopping so much and finding the best deal that goes around and getting the food that we need. And then the other way around, we've had some of our food market guests volunteer in other things that are happening in our community. Thinking of a lady in particular that volunteered in our clothing market. She showed up 3 or 4 times in a week and helped sorted through clothes. And she was just kind of sharing her love of sorting clothes and doing that kind of stuff. So it's been neat to see sort of the give and the take from our food market.
That's pretty amazing. You can't beat farm fresh eggs. And honestly, I had no idea that you had a clothing market. So that's very cool.
It's not open yet. It's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't tell anybody yet then.
No, you can tell people, just it's not open yet.
Okay. All right. Rachel, how about yourself?
Will you tell me the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, I sure can. How have people been able to share their gifts with you? And how have you been able to share your gifts with the community through food?
Ooh. Okay. I feel like I mentioned before, I'm in the middle of, well, maybe not the middle part, but I'm in the middle of 10. So I was always like an equalizer and a connector. So I definitely got like a little bit of the gift of gab and just saying, hey, here's the food course, and like pushing it onto people in a good way, like a positive way of like outreach, I guess, is a branch of it, but just like getting people involved and trying to get them empowered to want to have the access to food and like learn it for themselves. And the gift that the food forest has brought to people is just bringing the community together. And there's so many people that I just never thought I would connect with. Do you know what I mean? It brings people together in such a unique way, and different types of people, for sure.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And definitely you do share about the food forest a lot, but in a good way. Cheryl, how about yourself?
Thanks. One of the biggest gifts we receive from people is the gift of time. Our volunteers, Rachel's right. It takes a long time to build up a volunteer base, and people need to find the thing that's right for them to give of their time. And that is just, it's so valuable. And particularly when you're slugging it out, in July, when there's been a drought and you got to lug some water around to nurture and keep these plants healthy, that can be tough sometimes. And so the dedication and the time is a huge gift for our organization, because without it, we certainly couldn't do what we do. And I think that as an organization, of course, it's the food that is huge. It's also learning a life skill and the connection. Those are all really important for us. And while we're trying to impart that knowledge out there, we learn so much along the way, because in our Zoom meetings, there's a huge range of experience, everything from someone who's got tricks passed down from grandma that you'll never find in a book, and that really may not have any scientific background, but we know it works because we've seen it work, to people that have just planted their very first seed. So there's a really good exchange of information, and we try to create it as a comfortable space to be when you don't know what you're doing, and make it okay to make mistakes, or make it okay that a plant died and here's how to fix it. So
that's great, Cheryl. I had the opportunity to attend a few of the Zoom meetings, and one of the tips that I learned on there was about Epsom salts and in with the tomatoes, and I would have had no idea about that, so that was really great. So now I wanted to ask, how has your work with food helped you to discover other community connectors and help them grow? And maybe I'll start with Rachel this time.
How has it, say that again, sorry?
Yeah, sure, of course. How has your work with food helped you to discover other community connectors and help them grow?
We've just connected with so many people, honestly. I couldn't say. I feel like it helps like develop it helps develop people's skills and like empower them to do something that they didn't think that they could do. Like even well, Mandy, you know, getting involved with the Eagle Place Association and being at those events, we're connecting with little kids and like teaching them things about plants and parks and just natural areas that they wouldn't even, they're like so always in shock and in awe about what's going on. And I just feel like when we make so many connections, like we made outreaches with with Community Living, who invited us to this panel, which was great, thank you. And we have some of their clients who come out and connect, and it's always like a great way to bring such a such an abundance and diversity of people. Do you know what I mean? Like I said before, there's multi-generational people who come there. We have tons of kids who come there, different types of different cultures who come there. So it just brings such an interaction of people that wouldn't usually happen, I feel like.
Yeah, I love to see all of the kids that you have out at the gardens, or the you know, elementary students that are, or you know, high school students or whoever volunteering, and how you're able to kind of pick up on the skills that people have. Like for instance, the young lady that loves photography, and so you have her taking the beautiful pictures. That's really great to hear. So yeah. And Cheryl, what would you say for your?
I'm sitting here and, you know, Rachel's buying time for me, because it is a difficult question. It is, because like Rachel says, you know, as leaders in our different organizations, your job is to connect with anybody who will listen to you, and anybody who has a skill, and sometimes they don't even know they have a skill, but you find that connection, you find that match. And I think, I just think, again, it comes back to the village. Every one of those connections builds more community, builds more village, and you know, side benefit is more help for your own specific project. And I've got Risha asking, I'll quickly answer about the potlucks. So we're hoping things will open up, but I'm not really all that optimistic for this year. But really, it was just about, we started a little bit more complicated than we needed to be. So my advice to anybody that wants to do this is the KISS theory. Keep it simple, right? So yeah, because we would go out and we'd bring tables and we'd bring canopies, and we learned really quickly that if you just told people to bring a chair, and like a lawn chair, and something to drink, like their own water or juice or whatever, and enough for 5 or 6 people, because people were fearful that they had to bring enough food for everybody. And we would have anything from 11 people to, I think our highest number one night was like 42. And then the kids would break out into a little game in the park. Maybe it's baseball or soccer. And it was really just a time for everybody to sit and eat together. And we were introduced to different foods, and the kids all came and families were there. So it just reminded me of our, you know, our family reunions as kids. And quite often we would see people walk by because they were checking it out. They'd be back the next week once they, but they would come to check out to see what was going on, and it just really connected the community, and so we're looking forward to getting on with that again. I know that Susan, who's on here, she does it at Robert Moore Park, and it's been really successful for them as well.
That sounds like a great time, Cheryl. Thanks. Mark, I'll check in with you then. How has your work with food helped you discover other community connectors and help them grow?
Yeah, I think one good example of us is our connection with Eagle Place Neighborhood Association, or neighborhood group. I can't remember the official name, but
Got it right.
Did I? Oh, awesome, good. Even with our Christmas
Sorry,
baskets,
I'm in the meeting.
we were able to partner together, and we had the means to put the baskets together, and you had the connections to allow us to get a further reach into the Eagle Place Neighborhood Association and provide extra baskets. And so we were kind of able to work together and get that connection. We have another food bank in a church that we're connected with, and we share resources. If we get a ton of soup in, we call them up and say, hey, we've got 40 cans of soup, do you need it? And then it goes back and forth with that. So we've been able to make connections that we otherwise wouldn't have, because we have this food market and work together on projects to better our community and feed our community.
I love how you guys are able to share and collaborate like that so that everybody has what they need. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
How about yourself, Alex?
I think for our biggest connection with that, we go for the support systems that are built, kind of seeing what they're doing already, and then seeing where we can join together with both our ideas and kind of go off of that. Like for this past Halloween, we noticed that there was no door-to-door. That was kind of like a thing that everybody was iffy about, even the candy that was being passed out. So that was a huge scare, I know, for community. And we had seen the impact for the children and them being like, well, I don't get to use my costume only on one day kind of thing. And I think that was like our saddest point of view. So we had reached out to all our support systems within our community, and we kind of said, we're going to do a trunk or treat. So we had parked all our vehicles in our parking lot, and we had bagged up all kinds of like just different goodie bags. And we had tons of other different things that we were passing out, from cookies to like juice boxes, and just kind of having that ability. And that was open for all communities. So it was beautiful, not only for the ideas that were coming out of the trunk or treat, because we all had decorated our trunks of our vehicles, but we also got to dress up, which was the overall, like, it was amazing because we seen like the community gathering in a whole different way. So yeah, the children were utilizing their normal face masks in a way of it being part of their Halloween costume. So we seen tons of little ones just coming through the parking lot and just like bumblebee costumes and just you name it. They were all coming out of nowhere. And it was so beautiful because we were like, at least we felt we were still able to provide something. And with all the support systems, we were also letting the community know that, hey, we're still here. You can access us. We have the support system still up and running. Yeah, it may be a little bit different, but we're able to work on things, right? And just letting that awareness shine in a whole different way. And I think that was huge for us.
That sounds amazing. I love the creativity that you guys had. So I have to know, what did you dress up as?
I was a witch because I had my biggest thing was like Hansel and Gretel. Growing up, I watched the old version of Hansel and Gretel, so the kids think it's scary nowadays, but for me, I loved it. And so my whole trunk, it was like I had a candy cane lane kind of going to my trunk, and my daughter she was all dressed up as well with her little hat on. So it was nice. And she was excited to be able to pass the candy out. She was sitting in the trunk to be able to pass the candy out to all the children. and for them, it was like the Halloween point of view, right? Just everything that comes from it. But yeah, that was it. We had a whole our healing and wellness worker, she went all out and she had a whole balloon thing on her trunk of her truck, and she was dressed up. I'm pretty sure she was dressed up as Elmo. She went and rented a costume. So it was the ideas that were coming, and just the little for the adults as well, the fun in it, right? Something that we all enjoy.
That sounds like such a great time. I can practically picture it all. All right. So now here's the big question. So tell us what's next for food justice and food access in Brantford. So we'll start with Mark.
Yeah, for us personally, we really want to move beyond just providing non-perishable items, and move into providing fresh and healthy items like meat and dairy and fresh fruits and vegetables and all that kind of stuff. That comes with its own challenges, needs refrigeration and freezers and all that kind of stuff. But we just want to provide that holistic diet that all of us need, regardless of our income. And really, food, and especially healthy food, we think that it plays such an important role in a healthy and thriving community. And so that's kind of where we want to go, is to provide a more holistic diet for those who access our food market.
That sounds like a great direction to be going in, Mark. Cheryl, how about yourself?
Well, we have big goals. One of the things that's a long-term plan for us is a greenhouse and learning center. For us, it's really about completing the circle, right? So it's about planting the seed. It's about growing the plant. It's about collecting the seed. It's about preserving and canning the food, and really closing that whole loop, right? And there's people with some unbelievable knowledge out there to help us with that. So right now, I mean, we're looking for possibilities of land, and it needs to be well thought out in terms of location, because it needs to be accessible by the highest number of people that can be there. And really involving the community and having a weekly sit down, kind of a version of our potluck, except that maybe it's a volunteer day where people come and work at the garden, and we all sit down at the table together and share something, maybe bruschetta or something that comes out of the garden, that maybe a local chef comes and helps and talks about the food and why it's good for you, and come and try it. There's no harm and no risk of you trying it here. So there's a lot more that goes with that project, but in a nutshell, that's one of our long-term goals.
That sounds amazing. I'm so excited about that. And I'm sure you're going to pull it off too. All right. And Rachel, how about yourself?
Will you tell me the question again?
Yes, of course I can.
I get so entwined into listening to everyone else, I forget the original thing.
That's completely okay. And everybody has such fantastic answers too. Okay. So tell us what's next for food justice and food access in Brantford. So where are you guys going next?
We are growing. We want to get bigger. And also, number one is to empower people to come get the food. Everyone, if you're in Brantford, come pick herbs from the food forest. Help yourself. It's a help yourself. Come check us out. Come connect with us. And we would love to have more people. You don't have to know anything about gardening to come help out of the food forest.
Awesome. Alex, how about yourself?
I think the access, providing access to food is our key, whether that's from our dry pantry to our food deliveries that are going out, and even for the elders, the bigger support that's happening for them. I think just making sure that we're keeping the access ongoing is our key element that we're striving for, because this is not only just COVID funding that had come out of this. This is also our community that we're providing to. So we had noticed this is something that is well needed. So we're looking at many different things. Like Cheryl said, canning is a big thing for us. I grew up canning with my dada, so that's top thing. And I want to make sure that we're teaching these natural ways to our people so that they're able to understand. And not only that, living in an urban environment, we have to figure out ways on how to have these services where we can access them in a better way, where they're feeling comfortable. Even the garden boxes that we provided throughout the summertime, watching that grow and watching their plants grow overall was amazing. So just making sure that we're keeping that access flowing and looking at every avenue, any supports that are out there. Like, I love hearing from you guys in your food forest. I'm like, oh my gosh, I collected seeds. So I'm like, I don't mind donating seeds and just bringing out the community to let them know, it's nice for them to hear and to connect, right? And I think that's our key thing, is just making sure that we're showing that this access is here and that it's still ongoing.
That's amazing, Alex. Okay, so I was going to ask Rachel, for those of us that wouldn't necessarily know exactly what a food forest is, could you explain that?
Keep thinking I'm unmuted. I'm not. Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to share the screen so I can kind of give people a couple pictures of an idea. Is it working? Okay, there we go. And move you guys over a minute. So a food forest is a layered forest that mimics a woodland forest. Other areas would have a tropic forest and different variations, but we're woodland obviously for this area. And it starts with canopy trees. Our first section that we just planted recently, actually, we didn't do canopy trees because there's a lot of coniferous and larger trees around the edges. But our second piece will have canopy trees. We have lower layer trees, which would be dwarf or semi-dwarf trees, shrubs and bushes. And then we do a herbaceous layer and ground cover layer. We also have a vertical layer, but because the trees were there, we waited to put them in this till the second section, climbing up. It'll be climbing up our gazebo center thing that we're going to have in the center. And this takes a second. This is a map of the food forest, or the plan of the future food forest. We are on the first section. We have the first like teardrop done, and we're on the outer part of it right now. And then the second part is where the gazebo and the canopy trees are those bigger circles there. And everything's there is like geared towards size. So it would go down smaller and smaller as you get more bushes would be the medium size. And this is us in action a little bit more. So this is how the space looked on the first day. It's completely empty. And we have to do a lot of mulching. It's called lasagna style permaculture. And we have to build up a synthetic food forest floor. And we do that by putting 8 layers of cardboard down, compost, a nitrogen level of either leaves or hay or straw, and then wood mulch. And this is us growing a little bit. And this is growing some more. And this is where we're at right now. Like I said, we have that whole center part done and we're working on the outside. And thank you guys for listening.
Awesome. And for those of you, I noticed it's been floating around in the chat a little bit, but where the food forest is, you want to tell everybody where that is, Rachel?
An Ego Place. Me and Mandy know each other very well with our collabs. We are in Ego Place, which is known as a food desert. And we were really excited to get that spot. It's in Parsons Park, more specifically, which is right across the street from a school. And it's in direct correlation with a lot of low-income areas. So we're really hoping that we can help outreach them and empower them to grow their own food and help teach them.
Okay, thank you. All right. And Cheryl, a question for you. Rachel, when you've got your screen down there, that'd be great. Cheryl, a question for you that I noticed was floating around in the chat, and you've probably answered it in there as well, but for those that aren't following the chat, could you share with us where some of the gardens are?
Sure. In the city parks, there's Robert Moore Park, there's Earl Haig Park, Linden Hills, Johnson Park, Greenwood, Spring Street, Buck Park, Spring Gardens, which are 2 different parks. And then there's other locations like Myrtleville, the police station and the fire hall. They grow specifically for emergency food services, so for the food bank. But those other ones that I've mentioned are all communal. Come in, take what you want. You know, be great if you pick a weed or 2 while you're there, maybe water a row. But there's certainly nothing is tied to having to volunteer to be able to take things, because nobody knows anybody's situation, and timing might be, you know, not right at that time, but maybe it will be in the long run.
Awesome. All right, so now we're going to open it for community questions. So if you're comfortable unmuting yourself to ask your questions, we can definitely have you do that. Maybe if you just want to put your hand up first so we know that you're going to speak, then that would be helpful. Just so we're not all talking over each other, but we'd definitely like to open it up to questions for our panelists now.
I know folks kind of shared a bit about what it was like at the beginning and how this all started, but I'd love to know, like, what were some barriers, like off the hop? What were some things that you maybe had to overcome, or were there any risks to this work that you kind of had to navigate? What was that like?
Who is that question to? Sorry, Tim.
I guess everyone. I can anticipate that there were some barriers and obstacles in all of that work.
I can start first. I know the biggest barrier for us was when we were doing our food hampers. At the time being during COVID, there was a huge limitation on things. So we had to actually go to all of the grocery stores within the Brantford area to make sure that we're hitting our count, to make sure that each basket is getting the same thing that the other one is getting. So that was us. And I think at the time being, it was like maybe we were only allowed to buy 4 bags of milk or something like that. And so it was really us, like all as a staff, and us trying our best to go to all these different grocery stores to connect with them, and even the local markets around us, figuring out what they were able to provide to us, but not making sure that we're stripping away from the community that's still going out and accessing it. And I think that was the biggest barrier, and figuring out just how to properly juggle that so that we're knowing that we're providing, but we're also making sure that we're leaving enough for those community members that are still going out and accessing it.
For us, it was having to prove that we were there for the long haul and that it wasn't a passing phase, and getting people to believe that we were going to take care of the property that we were using, and we were going to be fair in our distribution. We had questions like, well, what are you going to do about vandalism? Well, I don't know, Rachel, but I mean, people have this natural, there's a study here, if we've got any professors or anything on here, people do not ruin plants for the most part. They might tip the rain barrel and they might wreck a shed. But for the most part, we have had almost no vandalism to the plants. There has been some, but again, it's a plant. We come back, we plant another one, and we never say a word about it. We just come back one more time, then whoever is having some fun with it. And the other thing is, well, what are you going to do if people steal it? Well, you can't steal what you're giving away. So there were some interesting conversations and really things that we had to prove, things that you wouldn't think you had to prove. But I guess it's like this, the same with a lot of things that once you build that relationship, then you're given more latitude and things get a little bit smoother and the partnership is stronger. So nothing major, just hurdles to figure out your way around usually.
I definitely agree with the weird, interesting questions and always refer to that. And I definitely agree with the plants. We had rain barrel damage, but the only damage we mostly had to our trees is deers. Deers are coming from the river and knocking some out last spring, but this year we put up deer fence, and I just went back last weekend and we haven't had any problems. So I'm worried a little for the mating season coming up. They usually come in the spring and rub it, eat the new growth. So hopefully they can't do any damage with the deer fence, but I definitely agree though. I feel like there was a lot of weird questions, even getting the momentum for support took a long while, but even proving like to city council, there was way too much talk about bird poop when people were parking and little weird stuff that I don't know what to say sometimes. But all along, I think like just like believing in herself and like being resilient to keep going and proving that it can happen.
Yeah, ours was similar to Alex, especially during COVID. Actual donations slowed down a bit, and we were given monetary donations. But then having to go out to the store and try to pick up 10 jars of peanut butter and 20 boxes of Kraft dinner, we just weren't allowed to do that. So it's finding creative ways to make those purchases. But even before COVID, with being called the food market, a lot of managers don't believe that we're not reselling the food, and so convincing them that we were actually a food bank or a food cupboard and we were giving away the food to get some discounts or to help us go over the limit of stuff was a real challenge for us, and really still is. But we like that name market because of the way that we're designed. We're not a food bank, we're not a food cupboard, but we are a market experience. So, but it comes with its own challenges for sure.
That's actually interesting, Mark. I would have never even thought of that piece being a barrier like that. So thanks for sharing that. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, Jim, you have a question? Oh, you're still muted there. There we go.
Okay. All right. Was there any insurance issues along the way, in the sense that a lot of these places are on public property, and the city is always very cognizant of that, and they don't want people to get hurt. So did you have to get any special permission, or did you have all kinds of regulations that were maybe odd that you had to follow? And how did you maintain that everyone could do this safely? Because I'm sure the issue came up.
Yes. Lots of barriers in that regard, and some locations more difficult than others. So for us, parks, having them in parks were more difficult than, say, the fire hall or Myrtleville or whatever. Yes, we registered as a nonprofit, Equal Ground, and we have to hold our own insurance. And for the park sites, we have to have the city named as additionally insured. At one point, the city had asked that all of the champions for each location had to sign an agreement, and this agreement was written by legal, and it was like 3 or 4 pages long, and it was like you have to give up your first kid, and you have to, it was so in the end I said no, I don't, that's pushing away our volunteers, so I signed for all of the gardens, so my neck's on the line if something happens. But so yeah, there are those barriers for an organization, for instance, who couldn't afford insurance is $1,500 a year for us, right? And so there are things like that. There are more rules and regulations. My people are getting sick of me saying it's just a garden. Can we look at the kids swinging from the jungle gym over there? Which is more, somehow along the line, a garden became more dangerous than a jungle gym. But again, as time has gone by, there's more trust and there's more latitude. But yes, there are those challenges for sure for us, and I'm sure for Rachel too.
Yeah, definitely. When we first came up with the idea, they told us we were going to have to purchase $2,000 worth of insurance every year. They were really, really, really concerned about people using a ladder or equipment in the park. I don't know if you guys are allowed, but we can't have anyone drive into the park at all. And sometimes we have, and we got in trouble for it, because how can you get some supplies in? It sucks. Sharing the roads though. We're not allowed to do certain things, like I said. And right now, originally when we approached them with the idea, they wanted us to get insurance and all that. Last year they started getting every single one in person who was going to be in their group to do waivers instead. They said as we get bigger, we're definitely going to have to get insurance, and as long as we don't have people using certain tools and stuff, just basic tools, and no climbing trees and such. So there's certain little weird quirky things that you can't do for sure. Yeah.
The funny thing to me about that is, of course nobody would be climbing a tree unless you guys are there with your food forest, right?
Sounds like a challenge. Thanks.
Thank you. It was definitely it definitely almost scared us away from it for a moment, because we were so unsure. And they also told us, like, I don't know how it went for you, Cheryl, that we would have to find a provider willing to do that. And when we called around and stuff, and that seemed like a task on its own, like finding somebody who would do that.
Oh, Brant Mutual. We had no trouble with insurance.
Oh, really? You're lucky.
Maritza, I see your hand up there. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mandy. I have a question for the panel. And I think Cheryl sort of touched base in her introduction with how with community gardens, it's there to help it be equally accessible to all people, like fresh foods. I think Cheryl, you mentioned about how it should be accessible to all. I'm wondering with COVID, you're hearing more and more about people who have lost their jobs, incomes, and now having to access services that are, I don't want to just say free food, but services that are providing for their acute situation of food insecurity. There's a lot of stigma around that for people. And how do you guys sort of have the conversation about that? How do you broach that and make it welcoming for people who typically don't see themselves needing that service?
Well, I think, as I said, that really is our biggest challenge is the stigma, and it's unintentionally created by those of us who typically do not need the services. It's out of good intent and wanting to help, but it continues the stigma, and so we are all ears to anybody who has ideas for that, because really for us it is about everybody being able to sit and share food, regardless of your situation. So Maritza, you've really hit on something we'd love to be able to undo.
I do agree, because people, they want to be humble and kind and think of other people, and so they're like, oh, I don't really need it. But if you're still like a lower income earner, you definitely could use a leg up at times, and in moments like this. For us, we just always like push and empower that it's for everyone. Anyone can come pick at the food forest. We ask you only try and take a third of a plant so you don't kill any off, but honestly, it's literally for every single person. Help yourself.
And I just want to add to that too, just because you may have money or you may have resources doesn't mean you've ever tried a tomato from a plant, right? That you've ever had a fresh, real tomato that hasn't gone through a whole, water pumping and transportation thing. So there's that too.
Our new food market that we worked on, we sort of asked the question, if we were to lose our jobs and have to access a food market, what would we want that space to look like? How can we make that space more comfortable and more accessible? And so we're doing it through design, and that's what we're hoping will help get over that barrier, that people who come and experience it will be able to share it with their friends, that it wasn't what you thought it was. It's something a little bit better. So we have a whole team that's working on that element of how do we do that through design, and how we're designing our new market. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Those are awesome responses. Thank you for that. I appreciate the input.
I think also too, like coming from our center, that's a huge thing for our community. The jobs that were lost and the shifts that were being taken away from them. So I think from us, it was showing that we have that personal connection with them, that we understand. A lot of us were sent home to work, right, during this time period. So that was even a huge impact on ourselves. Us being at home more, our children being at home more. So they were tending to dig in the cupboards and the fridge more. So we had figured out just different ways. If that was them not feeling fully comfortable with accessing a full food pantry hamper, then hey, we still could provide a grocery card, right? And just having that one-on-one to connect on that basis and that line, to make sure that they know we're a support system for everybody, not just the low income. We're here for every community that is within our area. And I think that was our way to connect within that. And just to let them know, like, hey, if you're not wanting a whole vegetable kit because maybe you're not using vegetables as much, or you don't, or you have that, then we can provide something else. If it's something that's just going to get you by for a couple days, and that's something you feel comfortable with letting us know, then let's talk about what we can provide to you just for that time period being, right? And even if we know sometimes those time periods may be a little bit longer, we let them know after we deliver that, hey, we're still here. This doesn't mean that you can't stop accessing us. This just means that we're here. We built that connection. We have that bridge now. Let's continue walking this bridge and making sure that we're staying in contact. And I think that's our overall perspective, just coming from all of us, all our panels, is just to let everybody know that we're not only here for low income, we're here for everybody within the community.
Thank you, Alex. That's really good. And I really like also to what Mark talked about with the design. That really resonated a lot. Everyone just with your responses really resonated. So thank you for that. That's great.
All right, and I think we have a question from Rachael Hindry.
Thank you. It's kind of a question and a comment both and off of Marissa's and as well. I feel like food justice, community activity, whether it's being able to garden with others or kind of ending a community like the Trunkers, is a great way to make all members feel welcome and can help like reduce the of maybe feeling uncomfortable or it's a need to receive food. And freelance work about community programs in areas of the country, including that also try to reduce the stigma. Schools, instead of having lunch programs for a certain income level, has started to do meals for students, like reduce the waste and also reduce that stigma. And not just providing backpacks with food. Students could have food on their holidays, or just like community meals or available patients, maybe like a hurry, or even people that has a program where if you volunteer, you can receive a meal. All of the tonight, the sense of community came through, and I think building that community and keeping connections positive and making those connections time really reduce that barrier.
Thanks for sharing that, Rachael. So we have a question specifically for Alex and Mark. Do you have any advice for folks who might want to start a free little pantry in their neighborhood?
Mine's pretty simple. Just do it.
Go for it.
Yeah, there's a young girl in Eagle Place. I'm not sure which street it is on, but she just put a cupboard outside her door and filled it with food, and people came, and she gets donations from friends and family and just keeps filling that cupboard up. So the first step, I think, is just do it.
Mm-hmm. And connect with our support systems that are around that are providing those pantries and those dry goods. Even if it's, hey, do you have a couple donations? Maybe you didn't utilize something. Is that something I could add in my pantry? Or could you help share the knowledge of this, right? And to let them know that this is a location, a safe spot for them to just come by and this is what I have provided in my pantry. So making sure that you're just like providing that knowledge aside from everything, right? And just letting everybody know within wherever it may be, even if you're making flyers up and you're hanging them on the community bulletin boards, that's a big thing. I think, and just within that, I think I know the youth that you're talking about, and I suggested for her, I know painting on rocks was a big thing and just laying them around the community. So I had said, paint paint the rocks and let them know, and have that sticker on the back to show your logo and to show your location of what you have in your food pantry, and that it's accessible for anybody, so that it's outsourcing those ones that may not have social media, may not have access to that, may not have the ability to go out to those shopping squares, right? So they're out and about on and just within the community. And hey, if you see a beautiful rock, you're going to tend to pick it up and flip it over and want to read it, right? So just providing just those different ideas, and always reaching out. If there's any questions and you're like, hey, this is an idea, but I don't know where to start, reach out and hear what everybody has to say, because no matter what, we're all here to help support.
That's some really great advice from both of you. I wanted to mention that for everyone who wants to get involved with all of these different organizations, we can make sure that the information of how to do that is dropped in the chat tonight. I know some of you are already doing that, but for anybody who didn't see that, that's populating in there. That's important. So, and now I think there'll be more time to chat during the breakout rooms at the end, but we just wanted to flip over and kind of tell you about something exciting that's going to be happening here in Brantford and Brant. So Taylor. All right, so I just wanted to mention to you something pretty exciting that's going to be happening. The Brant Food Systems Coalition, along with Openly, a consultant certified B Corp firm, or consultant certified, sorry about that, dedicated to amplifying the impact and supporting change makers, are in the process of engaging the community in exploring the feasibility of developing a food hub. So we're looking at what that could be for Brantford Brant, and we're eager to hear from you. So we really want to make sure that we're listening to our community, and we're undertaking a comprehensive community engagement process utilizing Openly's consulting services to gather perspectives on feasibility of a potential impact of a community food hub. So what is a food hub? So a food hub, a community food hub, can be a welcoming space where people come together to grow, cook, share, and speak up for good food. Activities of a food hub could include or will include collaboration, coordination of food systems, shared space, so that the community members of all backgrounds and food-based initiatives and organizations can co-create local food solutions. And why we're looking at a food hub is a food hub uses food as a tool to strengthen health, belonging, and social justice for everyone. So we're pretty excited about that. And we're going to be engaging with the community in a lot of different ways to make sure that we have everybody's voices heard. So what we'll like to do is we'll be reaching out, but most importantly tonight, we're going to drop a link for a little survey in the chat so that everybody can kind of give some feedback that was on here tonight. So thanks so much. And Taylor, you can stop the stream now.
Awesome.